I'm Dave Stewart with wetflyswing.com. Today I'm happy to introduce Jim Teeney from jimteeney.com.
Yep.
Today we're going to be talking about steelhead fly fishing and getting into I'd love to get into a lot of the history of fly fishing because, Jim, you've been around for a long time and you've pretty much seen this industry kind of as it's gone up and down and seen everything in between. And we've been chatting a little bit about, before we got on air here about some of the background. So hopefully we'll touch on that. But yeah, does that sound good? Just we'll kind of dig into it.
Sounds great, Dave. It's good to see you, and we have a lot of history and go way back with families, and So thanks for thinking of me.
You bet. Yeah, that's part of the thing. Everybody that I've been kind of connecting with I've had some connection. Obviously it's a small community, right? People that steelhead fly.
It really is, and we're trying to grow it, but I think it's got to the point where it's I think everybody's comfortable with what's going on and appreciate and respects it. So
yeah, good. Well, I always love starting, just kind of getting back, if you can bring us back to how you got into fly fishing and just maybe a quick little brief history of how you got started and how really the whole steelhead fly fishing, how that all came together for you.
Well, you know what? Back when I was 12 years old, my best friend Jim Bagley moved from Portland, Oregon to Bend, and we would always stay in touch and take Trailways bus, back and forth. Mm-hmm. And one of my visits over there, he was so excited when he picked me up. He says, "Come on, I want to show you what I'm doing." So we went into his bedroom, and he had a desk, and he had a vise there. And he put a hook in the vise and he tied up a fly, and I went, "God, that looks like fun." So I went to Bob's Sporting Goods in Bend, Oregon.
Okay.
Now, need to know this is 1957, and there was one signal in all of Bend.
Wow.
One traffic light. So I go to Bob's Sporting Goods, buy my first vise and hooks and feathers, and so Jim Bagley is the one that got me into the sport, and then. It was May of 1962, and I was a junior in high school, and we were going to go to East Lake. But the year prior to that, we were, and this is kind of embarrassing for me to talk about, but I'm with my uncle and my cousins and Jim Bagley, and we're trolling around Ford fenders and worms in East Lake, and it was so bad. I said, "You guys, I can't do this." I said, "Just drop me off on the cliffs on the North Shore, and you guys take as much time as you want, and whenever you just come get me, okay?" And so they were happy to get me out of the boat, and I got on the shore and I looked out, and man, there were so many giant trout just cruising the shoreline in the springtime, big browns, big rainbows. Beautiful brook trout. I mean, it was awesome. And so, but I couldn't get the really over 20 inchers to bite, the really big ones.
Right.
So that's when, prior to the trip, I'm home and I'm down on my dad's desk, and this Dan Shocker and I were going to go to East Lake the next morning, right? And this would have been in 62. So I sat down and I tied up a bunch of flies, and then I ran upstairs and I said to my dad, I says, "Hey, Dad, what do you think of these?" And he goes, "Well, they're pretty." He says, "But I don't know if they'll catch any fish." He says, "Why don't you just make something ugly?" So I went back downstairs and I did lay out every piece of material that I could make a fly with. And the ringneck pheasant tail feather was the drab and ugly, and it didn't catch your eye at all. And I thought, well, it's pretty ugly. So then I put a number 8 hook in the vise, and then I thought, well, this is the feather, so I stripped off some fibers, tied it down the butt section, because I thought, well, that's what I needed to do. And then I thought, well, I got to make a body, and then so I wrapped it around, and then I had these tips, or the feelers, And I thought, well, I didn't want to cut them, so I bent them under, so it looked like it was, really natural. And I tied up, and it looked buggy. Yeah. It looked ugly. I know that. And then so I made about, 8 or 10 of them. And I went back and I showed my dad. I said, "What do you think of these?" He goes, "Yeah, those look pretty good." So the best part of this story, Dan Shocker and I drive up early to East Lake. We get up there the next day. we hike around the shoreline, and we come down the shale, down between the cliffs, and put our rods together. And I'm looking into my box, and I thought, well, I'll put one of these on. So I put it on, you know, and then I looked and I saw this beautiful male rainbow, all alone, cruising, coming my way. And he was probably 5 to 6 pounder, but I had never caught a trout that big. And here he's coming. So I thought, well, so I cast out ahead, and I just let the fly and the leader to kind of go down like that because it was gravel out there. And then when he got close enough that I thought he could see it, I just started to crawl it back like that. He saw that fly, came right over there and just scooped it right up. I got so excited. I says, I got him. And he went to run, and I held onto the reel handle, and I broke him off. I'll never forget that. That was my first cast ever.
Wow.
You know, and then we went to Diamond Lake and we did the same thing. And, you know, I mean, it's been an amazing pattern, and then I kept the fly a secret for 9 years. Mm-hmm. So we didn't start our business till July 1 of 1971.
71, okay. And that was that fly, that was the natural that you got.
It was the natural. Yeah. And now we have like a lot of colors, but the colors came about through fly fishermen saying, well, you need a black for a leech. You need an antique gold for a stonefly. You need an insect green for a damsel. And so that's how a lot of the colors were developed through the years, was from requests from other anglers. And it's so, and I know for sure that fish can tell color.
Oh, yeah.
They may not see it the way we do, but there's definitely, and I could rehearse, you know, dozens and maybe hundreds of times when I have a color and it's working, I take it off, put another one on, it doesn't, I go back to the other one, it's working, you know, and it's just, it's how it is. Yeah. But anyway, that's how we got started in the industry, and it's been a great journey.
And so on the fly tying, so you started tying pretty young.
12.
12, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then steelhead fishing came along not too far.
Well, actually, that year was when I got my first steelhead, and it was on a lure with my dad on the Toutle River in Washington, and it was like a dream for me to get a steelhead. Oh my God! Mm-hmm. I mean, just on anything, and then I got my first steelhead that I actually took on a fly was a winter run, and it was from the Upper Kalama River, and it was in 1968.
Okay.
So in January 1 of 1969, I made a New Year's resolution that no matter how or when or where that I was going to fish, I was going to do it only with a fly rod. Nice. And I have never broken that resolution. Cool. So I didn't start the business till July 1 of 71. So 2.5 years, I got into the sport of fly fishing just because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And not because of business or anything. It's just because it was awesome.
Yeah. And back then, were you fishing teeny nymphs and other flies, or was it just?
I was tying up some other different brighter patterns, and you know, but I remember how I realized that the teeny nymph was going to catch a lot of fish, and I didn't really know it. That was going to catch a lot of things other than trout, you know, in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But we were on the Kalama River in the winter, and it was cold, a little bit of snow on the ground and stuff like that. And it was like my friend Don Anderson and I were the fly fishermen against my Uncle Bill and my cousin Mitch. They were gear fishing. So we used to bet, like first, biggest, most.
Right.
Well, we were all the way up. Nobody caught a fish. We were already up to a triple bonus. That was like $3 just for, you know. So anyway, I open up my box and I see a number 2 teeny nymph that I tied up. And it was natural, of course, you know. I thought, well, I'll put it on. First cast with that fly coming down there, my line stops, and it is the most gorgeous, probably 11, 12-pound chrome winter run. And I'm fighting it, and Donnie and I are so excited because we can land this sucker. We're gonna just clean house, right? Well, somehow, whether there was a beaver or whatever upstream, here comes this limb floating down into this low, clear water, you know. And it came down, I didn't see it until it was too late when it got on my line,
Yeah.
and then it went all the way down to the fish.
Yeah.
Well, just the fish just panning.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, here comes this limb coming down at him,
Right.
and it opened the hook.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, fighting and got off. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget my Uncle Bill. He goes, "That darn fish," but I knew what he meant.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think is the? I mean, with the team, what makes it such an effective pattern? Do you think?
You know, I really, honestly, it's very simple pattern. So for most people that want to tie it, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And when you get the basics down.
And I'll provide a link in the show notes to some where they can see these flies that we're talking about here. Yeah.
Sure. But I think I think it profiles nicely, and I think really it's more a suggestive pattern than one that would duplicate anything. But it looks like something that I don't. It's not offensive to the fish, and it may look like something that trout, bass, or bluegill can feed on. And for steelhead and salmon, you know, you don't know whether they're feeding or they're hitting out of territorial or anger or. You know, but I will say this, on the Kalama River years ago when I first started, you know, with fishing for steelhead with the teeny nymphs, I watched the summer runs and when I was using the natural, I actually watched some of them grab my fly and go like this with their mouth, trying to crush it, trying to get the larvae out, but thinking it was like a stone.
Cool.
Yeah, like you know, on the crawlers you see them on the rocks.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they were trying to crush it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's feeding, you know, and so that was pretty interesting for me.
That is impressive. I mean, that's the thing. When you think about salmon, especially, you always hear salmon aren't feeding when they get into fresh water, and people talk the same about steelhead. But I think it's just a little bit different with steelhead. I think they probably do a little bit more feeding when they're out there in the river, and that's probably why your patterns work so well. And for trout too, just the fact that it's pheasant tail. I mean, that's a great material to use for any. The pheasant tail, the beadhead pheasant tail, all those flies are all great patterns.
So the original pheasant tail nymph, Sawyer, I think is one that. Okay. So when we were back in England many years ago, Peter Cockwell, who's our very dear friend, got it arranged that I got to fish the River Test, the river that he fished, and I got to fish it with my teeny fly, and then he wrote a big article for England.
Oh, nice.
It was history for me.
Yeah. So the pheasant tail was actually created in England.
Yeah.
And you fished the same river where the guy that created it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even know anything about the pheasant tail when I tied the teeny nymph. Because he did other things to it, Sure. All I did was just wrap the feather around. And I'm
trying to think the difference is, I mean, your pattern, and actually I tied one a couple last night just because it's been so long since, and I remember when I was a kid, I had a whole box of teeny nymphs, because I was just, and I hadn't tied them in a while, and I tied one last night, and the great thing about it is so silly. I just tied the basic, like you said, the first pattern, which is just you wrap around the body and then you stick the legs underneath. And now you also do double, kind of where you have two
the
bodies,
double body
tails.
is like a size 4.
Yeah, you have a bunch in a different variation. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your different variations.
Yeah, and if we originally put a tail on it, before we do the body, then it becomes a leech. And now we're using different colored threads to make it an egg-sucking leech, so we've changed it up a bit, and they really are subtle but really nice improvements.
Yeah, they are definitely. That's cool. So I get a lot of questions from beginning, people that are just getting started with steelhead fishing, and I think the sinking line topic can be confusing. Can you explain maybe your sinking line system that you have and all your lines, and how maybe somebody getting new, how they might use those for steelhead, and maybe just go a little history?
Well, I'll start out with saying that if anybody gets into fly fishing and they almost always start with a floating line. That'd be the easiest line to learn to cast and to do everything, and it's all totally visual. But when you get more serious and you want to catch more fish and you want to hook more consistently, then you need to go to a sink tip or a sinking line, because they're not always going to come up to the top or be close, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so back in 1983, I came out with our original T-Series lines. And it changed fly fishing for the world forever. I mean, and my wife Donna, when we were up in Alaska, I don't want to get sidetracked,
Yeah. Oh.
but she got a halibut, which is a holding world record. It's not that it was a big one, but she got it on one of our big lines in 100 feet deep water with our fly and the fly line. I mean, who would ever think of being 100 feet deep to get a fish on a fly?
And that gets into a whole other discussion, which I want to have a little bit later, as far as because not only steelhead, but you've caught a lot of fish, different species.
So anyway, what my thought about the lines, prior to '83, we were always having to cut and splice lines. And the very first deep water express lines were made for me to test out, because Howard West, what used to be in charge of Scientific Anglers and 3M, and he wanted to fish with me. So he came out here in the winter, and we went fishing, and after a few days, we caught a few fish. Didn't light up the water, but we did land a few. And he says to me, he goes, well, what do you think of our sinking lines? And I says, well, Howard, I says, they're the best sinking lines available. But if you want to, fish our big rivers and our big waters, you need a line that'll sink 2 to 3 times faster than your high-speed high-D lines. He went back, and they made the Deepwater Express and sent them out to me. I immediately took the tip sections. I took 3 feet off of each end. Instead of having a 30-foot shooting head, I made it 24. Much easier to handle. And so, and then I like Albrighted it to level running line. And I can say honestly, it probably safely tripled my fish hookups, simply because I was able to get the fly down to the zone where they're at. And it just changed my fishing. So then as the years went by, I said, well, that was back in the 70s. And I said, well, why don't you guys make a line that's all one piece? That was to Bruce Richards. I said, why don't you make a line where the running line and the head are all together? He came back, says, I don't think we can make it, and I don't think it'll work. Well, I knew it would work, but I just laid back, waited probably 5 or 6 years, and then I could see technology get better. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to approach him, but I said, I don't want you to make it for yourself or Orvis or anybody else. Just, this is my line. Well, in order to order private label lines way back then, you had to order 1,000 lines. Well, that's a big commitment. And you're going to love this story. But Ben Silknetter was our rep, and Ben says to me, he says, they were all trying to, and Howard, they were all trying to discourage me. And so anyway, I woke up one morning and I told Donna, and I said, I'm going to do it. I don't think they realize how important these lines are for all of us that fly fish. And so I said, I told Ben, and Ben goes, who are you going to sell them to? And I says, I says, G.I. Joe's. He says, Jim, they carry SA in Cortland. Do you think they're going to add your line? I said, well, they carry all of our other products. I would hope so. And then I says, and then Doug Stewart, your dad. I said, what about Doug? And he goes, okay. So Doug buys 30 lines. Who are you going to sell the other 972? And that's when I'm thinking, oh, that's a little scary. Anyway, I placed the order. And I'm very, very proud of this. In the first year, we sold just shy of 4,000 lines.
No kidding. Wow.
It was just, it was an instant deal. I mean, the best anglers in the world, Lefty Craig. He said, Jimmy, I wouldn't go anywhere in the world without a T300. He says, it saved my bacon in so many places.
Wow.
And so, and we had the best of the best fishing our lines and loving it. So I'm very proud of that contribution to the sport of fly fishing. And it changed everything.
What were, before those lines were out, what were you guys doing to get down to the fish?
I had to do like the Deepwater Express,
the splice.
And I trimmed it down and splice it, and that's what we had to do.
And the Deepwater, how long were those around? Those were around for quite a while.
They were for a while, because I think it was the late 70s when Howard came out. Here, and mid to late 70s, probably the late 70s.
Yeah.
And so that line, see what it is. It's tungsten in the coating of the line, so it's environmentally safe, but it just delivers, your fly where it needs to be to make longer, better presentations.
Yeah, definitely. So, so if somebody was gonna right now, they wanted to go out and do some winter steelhead fishing. Say they're in maybe get a line that's all around, something that's kind of your not super high water, not super low, but something that's gonna. What would be the one line you would tell them if they're going to get a sinking line from
Well, if they were throwing an 8, 9, or a 10 weight rod, and they were going to go to the Sandy or the Clackamas or Calamus, stuff like that, I'd probably recommend a T400.
Okay.
A T300 or T400. The T400 works on an 8, 9, or 10 weight. And many years ago, back in '86, I did a video called Catching More Steelhead with Scientific Anglers. And they said, Jimmy, you can use only 2 of your lines. Which 2 do you want to use? And I said, well, I want to use the 5-foot mini tip and a T400. So in that award-winning video, that's the 2 lines that I fished with and caught all those big steelhead with. Where it was at.
And the 400 is connected to the grain weight.
Yeah, it's 24 foot of Deep Water Express. And the advantage of our teeny lines and the T series and the TS series, which is just a longer version, is there's no knot, there's no splice, there's no hinging, so you don't have anything going back and forth through your guide, boom, 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 click, click, click.
Sure.
You have none of that. It's all smooth transition from one color to the next. I color coded the line so you could see visually, you knew where you were and where the balance of the line was. And they're honestly, I know other, I know other companies have tried to, copy our lines and try to improve on them. But I'll be honest with you, Dave. If I could have made them better, I would have done it. Yeah, they are perfect lines.
They're the same, pretty much the lines you came out with in the '80s. It's the same.
They're perfectly balanced. Yeah. And if it's windy, you can still cast in the wind. Yeah. There's absolutely no disadvantage to having a one-piece line that'll do all the things it'll do. Yeah. And plus, like for an example, if you took a T300, you could throw it on a 7, 8, 9, or 10. So it isn't like it has to be for an 8 weight or it has to be for a 9 weight. Right. So we did a lot of testing on these lines and found out where. So it loads a 7, doesn't really load a 10, but it casts perfect because the lines are balanced. So.
And do the lines kind of coincide at all with like the whole spay lines or spay casting, or they could use them on a?
Well, some of the lines that our friend Mark Bachman had told me. Yep. He says some of the spay lines that have come out they're kind of like variations and knockoffs of your original design. And they've incorporated them into spay. So it's really it's. I think we're all out there trying to have a good time. Catches. I love to hook fish. So my time on the water is precious to me. Yeah. I don't always have to hook a ton of fish. Yeah. But if I can and I'm there and the fish are there, I want to rack up numbers. Yeah. I enjoy it. Yeah. Rather than just be casting all day. Right. I know I can cast. Yeah. So now I got to figure them out. So
that's right. I know I've watched some of them. You gave me. Thanks for giving me the video of the breaking traditions. And I know it's been a long time since I've seen that, but I know there's that's part of the I spot them, I got them, right? That whole I don't know if you want to call that a marketing sort of thing, but
I have people still to this day. Hey, I remember you.
Exactly.
If I spot them, I got them.
So it was a great marketing tactic. But so part of that was, and maybe just clarify a little bit on that video, because I know, was there a little bit of controversy, was there like a rocky?
Oh no, there was no.
Or maybe you could explain, because I know I was talking to somebody recently and they were saying something about there was some rocky that whole thing. So maybe clarify for the record what that was all about, because I'm kind of coming from it not knowing exactly.
Oh, you know what? There was a section in there. Well, actually, let me go just a little bit ahead of that, because in 1983. Jim Zumbo from Outdoor Life, some really good friend, brought him out here. He caught his first steelhead, and we've fished and got salmon and his first salmon. But anyway, he writes an article for Outdoor Life magazine, and then he calls me up one day and he goes, "You're gonna hate me." And I says, "What?" Because we're like brothers. I mean, we're really close. And he says, "Well, they named the article back in New York, the one I wrote about you." And I says, "Yeah, so what did they name it?" He goes, "This man throws rocks at fish."
Really?
And I says, "Really?"
There you go.
And he goes, "Yes." So anyway, here comes this article. It's a steelhead article. And what do? They have me with a picture holding a king salmon from Alaska, and it's a steelhead article. So anyway, here's the deal. I'm going to clarify that right now about this man throws rocks at fish. I do not throw rocks at fish.
All right.
I have thrown rocks above or below them to move them into another spot.
Yeah.
So where it's easier to catch them. But I never throw rocks at fish.
Yeah.
It's no different than wading out there or a boat coming over, how fish move.
Yeah.
But I remember my I'm going to make it short, but my experience with Zumbo, we're on the Washougal River in southwest Washington. So I take him out there, and I says, "Jim," I says, "see this? There's 5 or 6 steelhead right there in this big pool." I said, "But you see that riffle up there?" I says, "I'm going to throw a rock below them and see if they'll move up. And if they move up, then we'll go catch them." He never said a word.
Yeah.
I threw a rock out there. They moved right up river. Yeah. They moved right in. I mean, it was like perfect, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, let's go catch him." And he never said a word. We get up there. I think I made 3 casts and I landed 2. And I said, "Zumbo, come on, get your first steelhead." He makes a cast or 2, boom, and he gets one. He goes, "I would never have ever believed this."
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where he got this man throws rocks. But it really does work.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you people to go do it, and now
Sure.
I don't do it anymore because right now we've got lines now, and our techniques and our style are so advanced that we can do a lot of things that we couldn't do way back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were spotting them, and then you couldn't fish for them in a certain spot, so you'd kind of try to get them up into a place you could.
Yeah, that's all.
Makes sense.
To either move them up or down, or something like that.
Yeah.
But not at the fish.
Right. And that is a good point. Is that wading across the river is no different than throwing a rock down below.
No, you see fish moving out, and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just
so when you were kind of spotting the fish, I mean, that was probably something that you did quite a bit coming into a run. You would try, if you could, you would spot
I'm telling you, I took fishing and treated it like I was hunting. Because when I said if I spot them, I got them, I really meant that. I mean, it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it's such a high percentage. If you really can see the fish, you can know where you need to cast, how to present your fly to the fish, where you should be standing, and everything, and you can see how they react. Because there's been times when I've actually, like say for example, summer runs. So I'm fishing and they're letting the fly come by. As long as they don't move or get nervous, then I'm going to have a chance, and I'll change sizes or colors or whatever, or where I stand. But I've noticed I probably have seen this 4 or 5 times on fish, that when their fins start to get, just a little, they start to move a little bit like that, and I've said to myself, he's either going to take the fly or he's going to be gone, and I'll never see him again.
Yeah.
Quite often, they're at that point that bring that fly by one more time, and I'm going to nail it.
That's it.
I've had a couple of them just dart out. This is more than I can handle.
Yeah.
But more times not. But if you see the fish start to get like he's just a little bit antsy, he's hopefully going to take your fly.
That's it. That's it. Good. So just thinking about the flies again, if you had to take for steelhead fishing 3 flies, 3 patterns, what would they be?
Well, I would, for example, if I was going to go steelhead fishing, my 3 favorite, I have 4. Can I have 4?
Okay. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. It'd be the black, the insect green, the antique gold, and the ginger. And those 4 colors are pretty much my go-to flies. And then you could tie them in the double body, or the single body's a 6, but the double body's a 4. And if you wanted to make them into a leech, you could just add a tail on them. But those colors, like for example, The insect green is one of the best summer steelhead colors. And the antique gold's right there, and of course black is always good.
Mm-hmm.
But the ginger, when we can see fish, and you're wondering where that fly is and how your presentation's going, because there's been days that the ginger is so good that it's just unbelievable. And what the advantage of it is kind of like an off-white, kind of a creamy color. But when you take a dark river bottom and then you run the ginger on it, none of the other colors show up like that. It just, you can see it.
Right.
You can track your fly. And I remember we used to even use the ginger up at East Lake from the shore, because you could see the fly and you see these trout swimming, and then all of a sudden you see your fly disappear, and you set the hook before you even feel them. You know, I've done that with steelhead and salmon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they got it.
Yeah.
And
it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I'm going to set the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have, do you tie any, like, I guess the leech is the bigger pattern. Do you tie any, like, kind of mega? You see some of these steelhead flies, especially out there, like for winter steelhead, that are big and bulky and long.
Oh, yeah, like the tube flies and things.
And all that stuff. Do you?
Yeah, you know, we only tie them up to size 2 on our custom hooks. And they're probably about, this long.
Sure.
But they're not the bigger
mega,
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I've really found that the king salmon, they love our flies. I mean, they literally love them. And I've had like 3 days for sure, I can tell you, that I've actually personally hooked over 50 kings in a day.
Jeez.
You know, and one of them was down on the Trask River in the Oregon coast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just racked them up.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Our system now is so deadly with the lines and flies and our presentations and everything.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we learned as we fished is that in moving water and as long as the fish aren't too spooky, a short leader is better, like a 4-foot leader. And I've gone down as short as 2 foot, but on an average, about a 4-foot leader. I doesn't mean you got to measure it out to 48 inches, but what it is when that sinking and coming down, is taking your fly down, and you're getting a longer, better presentation.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you had a 7.5 to 9 foot leader, your line may go down, but by the time it gets your fly down, it's just a short little window, and you probably went over them.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't see them fish spooking that much with a short lead. I guess the water is usually...
They don't, because all of our sinking sections on our teeny lines are black. And it doesn't scare them, and it doesn't seem to make them nervous.
Yeah.
The only exception I'll give you on that is that if fish are in a pool, very slow water, moving, and they can be steelhead or salmon, and they're suspended, so they're not all on the bottom. They're kind of like, So then we use the mini tip, which is our wade forward floating with 5 foot of sink tip, and we may go up to sometimes 9 foot, maybe to 11 foot. And so the whole key to that is to just get your fly and part of the leader to come down by the fish, because you don't want your line, because they'll spook from the shadow of your fly line coming down. So you want your line back here and your leader and your fly to come by.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you're, say you're new to a river, this is the first time you fish a river, how do you go about finding fish? I'm just thinking about, again, people that are they're struggling to find, I've talked to somebody just, recently that said, somebody else was catching a lot of fish and they were out there and they couldn't catch a fish. And what do you do? What do you tell somebody that's new to, maybe just getting into a river and wants to find a steelhead?
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, it's a great question. And if I go to new waters that I've never fished before, I personally, I think, I love to read water and understand it, but sometimes, the fish are different. I mean, one river they hold here, then the other river they hold here. But I look at other anglers. And like that example you just said, here's a guy hooking a lot of fish. He obviously knows that spot.
Yeah.
He's not standing down where you are. He's standing where he is, because that's the place he needed to be. So you need to log that down in your memory bank and remember. And the only thing that can change that, from, seasons, but also water level. And when it's high water, they're going to be one place, they'll be in closer. And if it's low water, they'll be more toward the heads of the drifts or the deeper spots, for protection. Usually in early morning, they're in tail outs, before the sun comes up and they get disturbed, and maybe again in the evening. But you can learn a lot by watching other anglers and then just kind of wading around. But singly, the number one thing that helped me in my fishing since I was 12, and is wearing polarized glasses. It gives you eye protection, safety from seeing where to step, where not to step,
Right.
where the fish are, where they are not. There's no disadvantage to wearing polarized glasses, only advantages.
Yeah.
And safety.
Yeah.
And so I think I learned more from watching how fish react to something. I've seen them scare away, and I've watched them stay there, and I've watched them turn and take, and I've watched them chase, and God, I love every bit of that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I guess this thing with the polarized, only if it's a really overcast, dark day, then I guess if you have glasses, it might be a little dark. But they do have yellow lenses too.
Yeah, my favorite lens was the amber.
Yeah.
There's a brown lens, and then there's kind of a rose lens.
Yeah.
Those are other good, but the one that's a smoke color, kind of like a blue gray, that one there, when it starts to get low light, it darkens. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the amber, whether I'm saltwater or freshwater, I really like it. Brightens my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. So you were mentioning that you've been in this about 60 years, or getting close to that, in the fly fishing.
Yeah.
Give or take. What's kept you passionate about it for all these years?
Well, you know what? I think I love the challenge of it. I love the sport, and I love the fact that there are fly fishermen all over the world. In my travels, and you meet, and you know what? You always have something in common with them, and it's a great bonding sport, and I think I wish I can't say that I wish it, because I don't want to go out every time and hook fish and catch fish, but I've had some days that honestly people will look at me and, like, if I tell them what I did, they think you're lying. But I've had those days because we're fishing right, and the fish are there. They got to be there. If they're not there, you can't do the number game, And there's days where if you go out and you hook 1, 2, or 3, you're happy, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So but it's the people, it's my friends, and I think the camaraderie is the most important part.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
You can have a mediocre day on the river, but you can have a great day.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the bottom line.
It is, and it's. I think a couple things when I hear you say that. I think of my dad when he used to talk about guiding, and how there's a couple parts of the fishing can be bad, that happens, but the camaraderie, and you can still have a good trip because if you can still have that connection and the good have a good time there, then it's that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So, and I think for me getting in, I've done a lot of. I was telling you earlier, I've done a lot of stuff kind of in the online business, world, and separate from fly fishing, and and that's really what brings me back to this, is that it's different out there. People that aren't fly fishermen, they just have, they're doing other things, and I think you just run into a lot of people that maybe aren't, you don't see eye to eye with. So I totally, I get what you're saying. I think that's probably the big thing for me. What's really keeps me coming back too, and being able to connect with you and lots of people that I'm going to continue, as I go, with these interviews.
Well, David, it really is a lifetime sport. Fishing and and then fly fishing is it's kind of the challenge thing, and there's times where you make a cast and you think to yourself, wow, that was a good cast.
Yeah, that's right.
And I did put that out there.
That's right.
And it isn't always. This is one of the things that I think people really need to understand. It's not about distance.
Yeah.
On an average, it's all presentation.
Yeah.
If a guy can cast 80 to 100 feet, and here you got another person can only cast 40 to 60 feet.
Mm-hmm.
If he's making better presentations and control, he might hook more fish.
Yeah.
It's just it is impressive though. Like I found on saltwater, distance is really nice because you get more shots.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't, you don't do it right, you get another shot and another. But on our kind of fishing that we're doing, it's I can't tell you how many fish I've caught that have been maybe 15 to 30, 40 feet. Just not a big deal, but it's just like get it in there.
And that's part of the fishing, like any type of fishing. You never always start out close first before you just walk out there across the fish.
Absolutely.
And work your way out. Yeah, that's a good point. What is your, I guess you've done a lot of videos and lots of different interviews. I mean, what is your body of work? What's something that sticks out as something that maybe you're most proud of through all those years of things you've done? I mean, you got all these products and you got lines and flies, and is there something that really sticks out that?
For me, Dave, my thought on that is that I am so proud that we have a lot of people that have supported us through the 46 years in the industry and the contributions that I've made. And I may not get the recognition that I did, but I honestly pioneered and changed fly fishing. Yeah. And I got literally thousands of West Coast anglers to fly fish for salmon and steelhead. Yeah. I mean, back in the late 60s, there wasn't even a handful of us. No. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And so with the line design, the flies, and all the things that we've done and pioneered, like it's pretty much endless. And I'm really proud of it because when we find something that works, or we did something that works, we shared it. We didn't just, a lot of people keep it a secret.
Yeah.
Well, oh man, this really worked. I'm not telling anybody.
Right.
But that wasn't the way that I wanted to do it. I wanted other people to have the same success, or equal or better, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that's my reward. It's been a wonderful day, and I've met some of the greatest people in our fly fishing industry and in the world, and that are share compassions. And we've taken some huge celebrities out, fishing, and we've had Eric Clapton and Gary Brooker from Procol Harum, and and Three Dog Night, Corey Wells, and I mean we could go on and on, but they all loved fly fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So, that's probably again, it goes back to the relationships. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all here, we're doing all this stuff. It's about relationships.
I remember we went to the Kalama River, and we stopped at the Oak Tree on the way back, and we had John Denver fishing with us, and he was sitting there, and we were having dinner, and everybody could know, you could recognize, very recognize. Yeah. And I was so pleased that nobody really came up and bothered him or let him enjoy his time, I thought it was very respectful of people.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. So bring me back to a couple of the slaughter hole and cubits. Take everybody here back to that moment of, what that was like being at that.
I got to tell you, and
we're talking
was probably 1978.
78.
I think it was.
And this is the.
Yeah. Okay. So here, let's go to cubits. Let's talk about that first.
Yeah.
Because your dad showed me cubits, and he had a slot in there he called the no landum. Do you remember that? That's what he named it. He says the no landum. You could hook them there, but it was fast water. And
I do remember that.
They would just take off and just go
the tail out.
Yeah. If you really actually did land one, you were patting yourself on the back and I did it,
Yeah.
But the slaughter hole goes way back to, I think it was 78. This friend of ours from Salem, outdoor writer, he goes, Jim, he says, I need to get some pictures of landing steelhead with nets. And I says, well, come on up and we'll go see. So we went to I went to the slaughter hole with him, and we're there, and there was hardly any places to stand. There were so many people on both sides of the river. And and this one guy, nobody was hooking a fish, and this one guy was fishing off this rock, and he got off and he left. So boom, I'm right there. I stand on the rock. I got my polarized glasses on. I'm not kidding you. I looked out there and I went, oh my God. I says, get your camera ready. All I could see were I could see 150, 200 steelhead.
Jeez.
And they were just stacked out there. Well, in short order, I hooked 3 and landed 2 and released him. He got the pictures, and I says, do you have what you need? And he goes, yeah, I do. So we left. And you know what? I think your dad was the first one I called.
Yeah.
I says, Doug, I says, they're just stacked in the slaughter hole.
Yeah.
I says, we got to go. I says, I couldn't stop talking about it. And so anyway, your dad and I, we were like, I think we landed in a short period of time over, I don't know, maybe a month and a half or so. We landed like 97 steelhead between us. And I remember I went there one day with my dad, and my dad and I, between the two of us, we hooked 32 steelhead one day.
Wow.
With our little nymphs and the lines. Yeah, it was just, honestly, it was world class. And your dad and I have talked about it, but and everybody told us, we put on a clinic.
Yeah.
Every time we were down there, we were just bang, 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 bang. And we your dad and I were like little kids.
Yeah, that's right. And you have the same technique, basically. Use one of your sinking lines and just kind of getting down there.
Yeah. Well, back then we were making the heads with the running line.
Yeah, that's right.
That was prior to to our line, so we did have the knot.
Yeah.
See, and the thing is, whenever you have a knot in your line, you got to make sure you don't pull it in too far. Because if you do, and it goes click, click, and then you go to cast it, doesn't always. You got to make sure that knot is beyond it. So that we totally eliminated that with the T series and the TS.
That's right. Nice. So maybe we get to, and I've just heard this, and maybe I'm not sure on the truth behind the world records or just maybe you just talk about the flies or the fish that you've caught with the teeny nymph. I mean, has it been, and you fished, like you said, saltwater?
Oh, we've got tarpon and shark and barracuda.
Yeah.
In 2011, I went to Iceland, and for Atlantics, and I got lucky and I landed the largest one caught in Iceland that year, in the whole country. Caught and released one, and it was the pattern has not let us down. It's been all over, and so years ago we were pretty active with IGFA, International Game Fish Association. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, the more world records, this is great and everything. So we kept a bunch, and I don't know, I probably, through the years, probably held 12 or 15 world records. I don't hold any now, and Donna's holding 4 or 5 right now. But I got away from that because, and I've watched Donna personally released at least another dozen that would have been world records, but she didn't want to kill the fish, and so we just released them.
Sure.
It's now we know what we're doing. Whether it's she's caught bonefish up to 14 pounds. I fought a tarpon for 4 hours 35 minutes, so we got right to the boat, and the guide had the leader in the hand, so I took all the tension off. So I was done, and it's considered a caught fish.
Yeah. But
by our guide and 2 other guides, it was estimated at 250 pounds, and the world record right now on a fly is 202.
Huh.
This is a giant. This is 8 feet long.
Jeez.
Because we had it was that was the best battle that I'll ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. It was epic, and I was exhausted. But man.
Oh man, that is amazing.
It was amazing. Wow. Yeah, we chased him between 6 and 7 miles.
And those
in the
were
boat.
And those were caught on
antique gold teeny leech. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really. So I watched this big fish take it, and then it could never jump all the way. It just come up and kind of breach. Come up about halfway and just. It only did that a couple of times, and but it was. And Steve Dorn was with me. Yeah. So we were, we chased it around, and
Nice, gosh, that's I just think of the, some of the stories we could probably talk all night here with.
Oh yeah. Stuff well, years ago I wrote that book called Fly Fishing Great Waters, my hardbound copy table book.
Right, yeah.
and it's full of stories and
That's
trips, and it's pretty much my journey in my
Okay.
life up to that point of when I did the book.
Yeah.
And I worked on it for like 2 years
Oh, wow.
and I did it all longhand and all from memory. I had no notes,
Yeah.
but I told Don, I said, well, I better get all this down before I forget it.
Yeah. So is that book's, I know, gosh, I haven't seen that in a while, but is it still, can you get a hold of that? Is it
Yeah,
out there?
yeah,
Okay.
we still have some.
Okay, I'll provide a link to that as well. Nice. So where is, just thinking about, your website and kind of the business, where do you think you're going next as we've talked a lot about where you've kind of come from. Is this kind of riding off into the sunset, or do you have some other things that you're going to be pulling out here?
Well, I have more line designs
Oh, you do?
and everything that I'd like to come out with, and if given the chance, we'll be doing that. But I'm not done yet. I love
Nice.
this sport, and
All right.
I got a feeling that I want to just keep doing it until I can.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun I like to be on the cutting edge of new stuff. I don't want to actually be a person to go to copy other people, but I'd rather create and add to our enjoyment rather than say, oh, that's good, I'm going to knock it off.
Right.
And that's just how I am, and
Yeah.
what I like. Because I think when you do that, when you contribute to anything, you feel good about it. And I know in my heart what I've done for fly fishing, and I'm very happy and proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's amazing to think the amount of fish that have been caught on your lines or a line similar, just that whole thing of getting down to the fish. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
So what do you think has been, over the years, kind of the biggest change that you've seen kind of in fly? Maybe it's the line. Do you think that's just over the years that you've been around in fly fishing, kind of, has there been something that sticks out as a big change or something you've seen?
Well, I can safely tell you that in this day and age, all of us have never had a better selection of quality rods and reels and lines and everything. I mean, everything now has reached a real high level that there's a lot of good stuff out there. So which makes it easier for us. And now it's just, you sort out what you really like to do and what you really want to use, and then fish your style and there's books and look at the internet now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, you can learn a lot if if you're on there and you're asking questions and doing things and the research. So it's made our world smaller, made our sport so it's more enjoyable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's not like I mean, I love to fly fish and I love to bow hunt. I'm an archer. I got into that in 1975, and we had talked earlier, Dave, but I do those sports because I personally feel I'm getting the most out of hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
And I was brought up in the outdoor world as you were, and I just thank God for that because I love it. I think that I feel so sorry for these kids nowadays that are just using their hands and their fingers or their computers, and they don't they don't know what a campfire, roasting a marshmallow, and I'm having a hot dog and setting up a tent. They're missing so much of the beautiful part of this world because they're just not outside doing it.
It's huge. It's huge, and I was just actually writing a article just kind of about just kind of being a dad, and the connection. And I think that's something my dad gave me. I mean, all dads struggle with things, right? And he's had his struggles, but I mean, he gave me the outdoors.
Yes, he did.
And he gave me the fly, and that's something that I've had my whole life. And I think like you said, some of these kids that never were given that, they maybe never even had felt what it was like to do that sort of stuff. So.
And they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah.
They really don't know.
Yeah.
So anytime I guess we can expose it to some new people, it's a wonderful thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what definitely this is, like you were saying earlier, that, this interview will be out there for people to see, down the line. And, as they have questions. I'm hoping, I can direct them your way if there are questions about
Absolutely.
lines and things like that.
Well, I've never had one person come up to me in the 46 years that I've been trying to promote the sport of fly fishing and say, I tried it and I didn't like it.
Right. Yeah.
That's a pretty good deal.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Nobody's come, I tried it, I didn't like it.
That's right. So once you get, so I guess there's things that come up, work and all that stuff that gets in the way, but once you try, you pretty much don't give it up. Yeah,
no. I mean, I've had people come up, I tried it, I didn't get anything.
Yeah.
And I says, well, how are you fishing?
Yeah.
And, and you ask them and you try to give them good insight,
So have you done that? That gets back to more of like a kind of mentoring, guiding. You never really got into that specifically, right? I mean, that whole... But
I did for 3 years.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, we were licensed guides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, Donna and I and my brother-in-law Walker, and we got guides license.
Okay.
And I got a feeling it was like 85, 86, 87.
Yeah.
But I never fished when I guided. I never did, unless somebody really insisted or asked you, but I never did. Because if there was a fish out there to hook, I didn't want to hook it. I wanted them to hook it.
Sure.
Yeah. And so finally I told Donna, I said, God, you know what? I like to fish too much. I better save this for the real guides.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we had 100%, whether we went for bass, bluegill, trout, salmon, steelhead, we always had our customers catch fish. Or hook fish,
Yeah.
And so, but it was just the idea that I just missed fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is hard to do. So I just got a couple more questions here before we wrap up, and I get a lot of people. We've talked a lot about kind of the West Coast because we're out here with steelhead and salmon, but there's a lot of steelhead. There's a lot of passionate people in like the Great Lakes area that are targeting steelhead and salmon over there as well. And I'm not sure, have you ever hit that area much? Okay.
That's the article.
Yeah, that's right, this article.
Oh, no, I started going to the Great Lakes back in the late 70s. Okay. So I think it was 78. Yeah. And fished the PM, the Pierre Marquette, in Michigan. And then I've been back there many times. And I fished all the way, I fished Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, let's see, not Indiana, but I fished New York and Pennsylvania and then Ohio. So I fished all of those. This is my personal opinion. The best states are Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. The further, and that's Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, and the fishing is phenomenal. And I do remember what it was. I landed 22 browns one day with the mini tip and our teeny nymphs on Sandy Creek in upstate New York, and they ranged from 5 to 12 pounds.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing day, on a little tiny creek, and here are these great big browns, and it was pretty cool.
Wow.
And the steelhead runs in Elk Creek and Walnut Creek in Pennsylvania are phenomenal numbers, like what we used to have out here.
Yeah. And are you fishing the techniques or similar to what you would be doing out here for
same
steelhead?
thing.
Same thing.
Just a little bit smaller stream, so you wouldn't. What we fished was the mini tip and a T130 or a T200.
Okay.
So we didn't need to go to 300s, 400s, 500s, or any of that.
Because it just wasn't that much water.
They didn't have as much current flow.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you had one fish species to target tomorrow, anywhere in the world, what would you be going for?
Tarpon.
Really?
Yep. Back in, I think it was probably 79, it would have been. I get a call from our friend Chris that lived in Denver, and he goes, hey, I got a friend here who wants to come out and steelhead fish with you. He says, his name's Billy Pate. I didn't know who Billy Pate was, and at that time, and so anyway, I talked to him on the phone and says, come on out, we'll go fishing. So took him on to Washington, and we caught some beautiful summer steelhead. And then he wanted to go to the Deschutes River. Well, Steve Dorn had a jet sled.
Oh, yeah.
And Steve, there's this guy here. His name is Billy Pate, and he wants to go fish at the Chutes. And I says, and I want to go archery hunting. Because I was wondering, and he goes, I'll take him. So Steve took him, and they got fish, had a great trip. So Billy invited us to go down tarpon fishing. Well, long story short, we hardly knew what a tarpon was anyway. So one day, Steve and Lynn are home, and television's on, and Lynn says, hey, you remember that guy you took fishing, that Billy Pate you took for Jimmy to the Deschutes? Yeah, he's going to be on American Sportsman tarpon fishing. Steve sat down, watched that program, called me up, and this is exactly the conversation. All I got to say was hello, when I answered the phone, and Steve goes, I just watched Billy Pate tarpon fishing on American Sportsman. I'm calling him, we're going. And he hung up the phone. And he hung up the phone just like that. So then that's how we got into tarpon, and Billy. I got my first tarpon with Billy, which was quite an honor and privilege for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then we fished with him for 3 years running, and then we always became lifetime friends.
Yeah. Good deal.
Yeah, I had a great teacher.
Yeah.
And a great friend there.
So I guess I just had one other question, and this is kind of business related. So if you had somebody that was getting in, like you're saying, there's a lot of online. I mean, you can start a business tomorrow online, right? I mean, there's all sorts of stuff you can do out there, and a lot of people, there's people that are interested in fly fishing, and they maybe want to get started. What would you tell somebody that's just getting started? They're passionate about fly fishing, and they want to try to start a business. What would be, just kind of a general word of advice for somebody? I mean, you've been in business a long time, right? I mean,
it's been a long run.
Yeah,
it's tougher now though.
Yeah,
it's not like when I first got in and we had the river runs through it,
right?
The movie and all that stuff. So it was a big wave, but it's still there. I mean, the industry and the sport and the passion is still there. So people periodically will ask me that question, and I tell them I think the way to get started is to either kind of work at a fly shop and or become a good photographer, and then start writing articles and getting those out and getting your name known a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a good stepping stone. So people will say, well, okay, I would like to be a manufacturer's rep, and that's a hard deal to get in there to be a good manufacturer's rep, and you have to establish your credibility with people, and that can take a long time. Well, it's the same thing in writing, but those are stepping stones, and become a manufacturer's rep. I don't know. It's a little bit more competitive now. People aren't, if they got a good line and they're staying there, they're not moving.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's a great. I think about it myself getting into it. It's been. It's definitely not easy, but I think, again, it comes back to, like you're saying, building those relationships and just connecting, networking and connecting with people. And if, you can't, and that's kind of the weird thing about the whole online space is that, you're back here just on your computer, right, behind this computer.
Yeah.
But you still have to get out there and connect with people, even online.
You do.
And that's the bottom line. So I think the more you do, the more of that you do.
But if it's your passion, I'd say pursue it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. All right, Jim. Well, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to. I think.
Thank you, Dave.
Again, there's a bunch of things we could kind of follow up on, but maybe we'll hold that for another interview down the line.
I'll be up for anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really great to see you,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. All right.